Knowledge for Men, episode 110.
Welcome to knowledgeformen.com, where you're going to grow into the man you want to be. Your life will never be the same again. I can guarantee it.
Hey guys, just wanted to offer you a free gift here as a part of being a listener of my show. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can get the top 30 books and top 30 success quotes that every man must live by. So obviously every show we talk about books and we talk about success quotes, and so I've compiled the best of the best out of the last 100 episodes into a short guide. So kfmfree.com and it's all yours. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Joey Klein, an internationally known personal development expert, martial arts champion, and author of Inner Matrix, a guide to transforming your life and awakening your spirit. He travels the world teaching this technique of conscious transformation to support people in living healthy, happy, and fulfilling lives. He was actually invited to speak at the International Peace Summit for the United Nations in 2005. So, Joey, quite the career here. I think this is going to make for an interesting episode. How are you doing today?
It's going well. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate being here.
All right, sounds good. And Joey, let's dive in with a favorite success quote of yours or saying that you live by and explain to the audience why you chose this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have, one quote that I always touch into every day of my life is, I'm the center of my world. And, another version of that sometimes when I want to make it a little bigger for myself is, I'm the center of the universe. And the reason I love that quote is because it really gets me immediately in touch with the idea that I really am the center of my world, right? Nobody can look through my eyes and see what's going on. In the same way, I can't step into anybody else's body and see the perspective in which, or their vantage point of life. And it immediately gets me in touch with how I'm influencing and affecting the world around me all the time. And so then I immediately become mindful of that influence I'm having. And, there's all of these things that kind of revolve around me. They revolve around us. And it's so easy to sort of get caught up in the way life is unfolding, the things that are happening out there, and all of a sudden move into a reaction to those things happening, and oftentimes maybe not such a positive reaction to those things happening, and then instantaneously can forget the power that we truly wield to influence everything from our personal relationships to our career, our business, the business we're growing, the communities we're involved with, etc. And so when I come to that quote and I just say, I really am the center of my world, it immediately puts me in touch with, I really am the center of my life. I am creating my life from the ground up, and it just helps to create that immediate perspective of the influence that I'm having and get me on point there.
All right. I like where we're going with this episode so far. I can tell you have a ton of really good content on being conscious. Let's take a few steps back, and I want to learn how you really got started with this all. Like, how did you get into this journey, and what was that like for you? So take some time here and share with us how you got started.
So I got started in this, really about 14 years ago. And I remember I was in my teenage years, and I was looking around me at people that I knew in my life, people I was close to, my parents and my aunts and uncles and friends and the parents of my friends and, kind of what they were up to. And I grew up in this little town called Andover, Kansas. It's outside of Wichita, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And it was actually a really affluent neighborhood. And so people had, they had the house, they had the cars, they had the dog, they had children. I mean, from the outside, everything seemed on point. But when I really watched and really paid attention to the experience of life people were having, including my parents, etc., I couldn't say anybody was living a joyful, vibrant life. I couldn't say that they were living a life they really wanted to live. I saw a lot of people who were depressed. They were unhappy, not satisfied with where they were. And it wasn't even necessarily that they were saying these things. It was just more a sense that I got. And I kind of had this idea, and I knew intuitively that if I kind of followed in the footsteps of these individuals and kind of took the advice of my, the mentors that were around me at the time, that I would pretty much end up where they were. Not to say there's anything wrong with having a nice house and car and children and all those things. I mean, it's fantastic. But, if we're in that life and we're not happy with it, we're not fulfilled living it, then what's the point? I mean, it just becomes a nice prison, as I say. And so I wanted to learn how to do it differently. What is it to really live a fulfilled life? What is it to truly step into living an exceptional life where you look around and you say, wow, I really love and I'm amazed by every aspect of my life. And I truly wanted to aspire to that. And so, I intentionally sort of didn't follow in the footsteps of those around me. And I dove into, we'll say, non-traditional methods of education, and that took me to, we could say, traditional martial arts training. And I went into studying the Eastern philosophies, such as, traveling to India to kind of study mysticism. And I went to Tibet and looked into Buddhism, and I studied psychology and the neurosciences. And, I was just hungry for, how do we live a fulfilled life? How do we really live in a space where we love what we're doing and that becomes our expression? And, I was fueled by that because I was, not only was I seeing people around me not inspired by the way they were living, but, I myself at that time was in a place of just extreme suffering. I was definitely in my rock bottom. And I wanted to know, how do I know peace in life? How do I find joy in life? And I was looking for that window, that way of being, even though it wasn't around me. And so I ended up sort of literally searching the globe for those answers, and I was willing to go into just about any modality to find the answers I was seeking. And sure enough, I started finding the answers, and I started, put the pieces of the puzzle together, and people started seeing that I was living differently. I was, happier in life. Things were starting to happen around me, and my friends started saying to me, Joey, you're different. What's going on with you? And, I just told them about what I was learning and studying, and maybe a meditation practice I was doing or a principle I was trying to live up to in life, and then they would adopt it for themselves, and it made a difference for them. And before I knew it, I had people just coming up to me and asking me to coach them, and I just I set a dollar price, and I said, well, here's my hourly rate, that'll be great. And I started a coaching practice. That quickly grew to having a waiting list. And then people were like, Joey, I don't want to wait 2 years to talk to you. Why don't you put on programs and seminars and teach more people what you're up to here? And so, I began to teach programs. Those quickly filled and sold out because it was, the techniques were simple enough, people could apply them easily, and it was effective enough, people were seeing real change happen in their life. And so, then that grew. And then all of a sudden I was teaching 30 programs a weekend, and it just kind of took on a life of its own. And I really had no intention of teaching or coaching anybody. It was really, I just want to know that secret to life, we could say. And I was searching for a way of living that would bring me to fulfillment, bring me to a place of joy. And if I'm really honest, I had no concern with or even thought of trying to help anybody else out with it. And so, that's kind of how I ended up here, was looking for, how do I stop my own suffering and, live the life that I really want to live. And then I ended up finding, by way of searching for that I actually found my greatest value inside of serving others. So that's kind of a short version of how I got here.
Wow, that's quite the journey there. Now, was conscious transformation the sum of traveling to India and studying Eastern philosophy and training martial arts?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a combination, an eclectic, we'll say, a bit of all of those things. I took what I learned from martial arts as an example, and the relationship, as I would say, the appropriate relationship with fear there. And that was my introduction actually to meditation, was in traditional martial arts. They would, teach us to meditate, to control our emotions and things like that before you got in the ring, and definitely, studied the mysticisms and the more kind of mystic traditions. And, when you take the dogma out of it and you just look at it as practical application, I mean, these things were great for, influencing change inside of people. And ended up studying, like I said, with a psychologist who kind of took me under their wing, and they said, Joey, if you teach me meditation, I'll train you in psychology. And then, I kind of took what I found was the best of these worlds, put them together in a way that really complemented one another, and really science shows also works and why it works, and that's really what conscious transformation became.
Now, how exactly does conscious transformation help people achieve their goals, pursue their passions, and like you mentioned earlier, basically live a fulfilled life? How does that work?
For me, it's a critical component because, if we think of being in a place of optimal health and well-being, everybody realizes if I want to be in a place of optimal health and well-being, I've got to exercise consistently and regularly, and I got to be doing the right exercises. And same thing, I've got to eat nutritionally in a way that, my food regimen or my nutrition intake is optimal as well. And, I've got to be up to that consistently. And, all of us have been inside of that space before where we worked really hard, we got in shape, we ate really good, and then we just felt amazing. And then all of a sudden we kind of regress back to bad habits, and it's kind of like we have this idea like, oh, now that I'm in phenomenal shape, it's just going to last forever. And the next thing you know, we're not going to the gym anymore, we're not eating the right foods, and then all of a sudden we have a belly again, and we're sitting on the couch watching football or whatever, and then, eventually we're unsatisfied with ourselves, and then we go back to the gym. If we want to realize what's optimal, we have to be up to those things consistently. And what I found is most people don't put what I call internal development in that category. And so if you really want to access what's possible in life, truly realize your potential, then you absolutely must be inside the same kind of training regimen for your mind, for the emotions, for the brain itself. And a lot of times we don't think to train ourselves internally that way and really make sure those mental capacities, those emotional capacities, the way in which we think, the way in which we feel, we don't think about training those in the same way. And so for me, if I look at people who truly achieve optimal success, when I work with, Fortune 500, the executives of Fortune 500 companies, or I work with really successful entrepreneurs, or, a high-level athlete who's truly at the top of their game, whether that's in cycling or martial arts or whatever, it's not just about how they're showing up physically. They definitely have a mental, emotional game that they've mastered and are usually inside of some principles that they're using, either knowingly or unknowingly, to realize that potential. And so if you're not inside of a consistent system of training the internal components of oneself, mind, body, emotion, spirit, then you're not going to realize what's possible for you.
Yeah, Joey, can you elaborate on the consistent system of training? I think that's really the key here.
Absolutely. So very few places we can go to learn how to think. Even though our mind thinks all the time, few places we can go to learn how to think the mind. And so, I might be in a destructive way of thinking and not even realize that I'm there. And so I was just working with an entrepreneur the other day who owns a construction business. And, he was on the job site, and he just really gave it to his guys because he's successful, his business is growing. And, he's getting a little overwhelmed because he's reaching a capacity of attempting to execute that he's never been in before. He has more work than he's ever had before. And so he had this idea that if he just pays his guys a few more bucks, they'll work that much harder for him, and, they'll be inspired to get more things done. When that didn't happen, that didn't show up for him, his mind went to the place of, they're ungrateful and they're not working as hard as they could, and then he really let them have it. And so he's sitting here and he's thinking to himself about, I'm really stressed because I got this stuff to do, and the clients, they're complaining to me, and he goes to his guys, and he just flat out just kind of rips them one, and he says, you know what, for the amount I'm paying you guys should be doing a lot better than you're doing. And so the reason he ended up taking that action was because of the way he was thinking about it. My guys are ungrateful, they're not working hard enough, I just gave them this raise and they're not doing anything different, so on and so on. Didn't even realize he was thinking this way. And then he ends up kind of getting on his guys, and his guys, of course, feel real motivated now to really do a good job for him, right? Because he just kind of reamed them. And so what I got him inside of was, okay, how do we think about this situation differently? How can you influence a different change here? And then I pointed out that his mind was inside of this particular theme, and he was feeling a particular way. So he was feeling resentful, he was feeling overwhelmed, he was feeling anxious, which is it's a fear-based state of being. So what happens in that case is the mind, the brain, goes into a fear-based state of of action, meaning the brainstem's lit up, you lose access to critical thinking, which is frontal lobe activity, and we literally just kind of become stupid in that moment. We don't access our highest capacities. And so he was kind of in this fight or flight way, and then that's how he ended up taking action. So I had him calm down, I had him breathe, do some exercises, and then we got into a place of, okay, if you're grateful for your guys, what does that sound like? They're doing the best they can, they really want to do well, I absolutely know that's true, and I said, great, what's a strategy that you could use to get the results you want, which isn't them working harder, it's create this amazing job site and create this outcome that you want of, creating a superb house for your client and doing it in a timely manner and so on and so on. And immediately he said, well, I'll get my guys together and I'll just simply ask them what they think is the best strategy to get these things done. And I'll include them in the process. And in the moment there, when he was really thinking in a particular way, he could access that understanding. But in the moment when he was anxious and he was feeling overwhelmed, obviously his behavior was less than beneficial. And so that's just one example of, if we don't train the mind and the emotion in a particular way, we're not going to have access to our highest capacity.
And what are some of the exercises that you mentioned about earlier that help people achieve conscious transformation? We can kind of just like walk through what it is that someone has to do to get there.
Sure, absolutely. So first, as I say, we have to be aware. We have to create awareness. And there's several ways we can do this, but I'll just give a very simple strategy right now, which is literally just being willing to stop and take the moment to ask oneself, what is the focus of my mind right now? How am I feeling? And then once you have that reference point, then we can work from there. And what you're looking for when you ask that question, what is the focus of my mind? What is the state of my emotion? Is two things. One, am I inside of a fear-based emotion or a love-based emotion? And why that's important is because, again, as I referenced before, it's about how the brain works neurologically inside of those states. So if I'm in a fear-based state, I'm immediately inside of what I call fight or flight. And then fear-based emotion isn't just that intense fear that we experience when something extreme is happening, but fear-based emotion is also sadness, guilt, shame, insecurity, anxiety, all of these types of things. And so what happens in that moment is the brainstem is highly active, the frontal lobe kind of shuts down, and basically what that means is we literally lose access to critical thinking, creative thinking, strategy, planning ability, and we also lose access to our higher emotions, love-based emotions such as love, compassion, enthusiasm, excitement, all of those expressions that really drive people to success. And so if I take that acknowledgement, I just simply tune in. In this moment, how am I feeling emotionally? And I just look at that. And if I'm in a fear-based emotion, then I know I have to shift it. I know I can't trust myself to act or take action in the most intelligent way. When I used to fight, I'd get in the ring, and one of the things that we used to do to each other is if you could get the other guy upset, then you most certainly won the fight. Because as soon as somebody was upset, they moved in that fear-based way of being, and now they're not thinking about strategy. Their technique goes out the window. They get flustered, and so they're not going to perform optimally. And so it's the same thing inside of career, right? If I'm about to go into a board meeting and I'm feeling highly insecure, that's a fear-based way of being. And we've all had that experience where we go to give a presentation for the boss, or we have this client and we're giving the presentation, we're trying to make that sell, and we feel insecure, we feel anxious, and all of a sudden what we were thinking to do or what we planned to do just kind of goes out the window, and then we just kind of fumble over ourselves. That's literally because in that moment of that fear-based emotion, we lose access to critical thinking. And so we got to gain that access back. First, we have to know, am I in a fear-based state? Then once I can acknowledge that, now I'm ready to make that shift. And so I just simply tune in. How am I feeling right now? If you feel contracted or any kind of lower fear-based emotion, then you want to take that breath. You've got to choose to change that emotion. Begin to shift the emotion. The best way to do this is simply breathe. Because if you notice when we're afraid, people take short, deep breaths. The body tenses up. There's these physiological things that happen. And so we can use those physiological reactions to shift our state. One, relax the body, and literally just take 3 or 4 deep breaths. That'll calm down the brain. It'll get the brain to move into or out of fight or flight, and it'll give us access, again, neurologically to the frontal lobe. Now we can start to think through the situation, like in my example with the owner of the construction company. Now we can start to get inside of strategy, creative thinking, and we're also going to feel better. We're going to feel compassion. We're going to feel gratitude. We're going to feel inspired. And whenever we take action from those higher emotions or ways of being, we're going to be more effective. And as I said, the second place to tune into is, what is the focus of my mind? Because oftentimes what happens for people, the mind thinks and then it takes them on a roller coaster ride. They don't think their mind. Very, very few people truly stop and think their mind, use their mind as a tool for creation, as I say. And so what happens is the mind is thinking, and then they just sort of go along for the ride, rather than stopping and directing their mind. And so we can use the same strategy when it comes to the mind. Stop and focus. Am I focused on positive things right now, negative things? Is my mind focused on the great things my wife does, or is it focused on all the things that I wish she would do? And you'll find that if the mind is focused and aligning with the outcomes that one desires in life, you'll quickly take yourself there. But typically, the mind, without us even realizing it, is focusing on the exact opposite of where we'd rather be. And so if we were to just kind of use that like lifting weights and tune in several times a day, what am I feeling, what am I thinking right now, and then take that next step, take a breath, make sure to shift that fear-based state, and simply take action from that higher place of being, and with a focus of mind on what we choose to create, you'll see things will start to shift very quickly.
So it sounds like conscious transformation has a lot to do with, one, being aware of the state that you're in, and then getting yourself into the more productive state that's going to help you make the best decisions and get better results.
You've got it exactly right. As I say, it's learning to use the mind as a tool for creation, right? It's really mastering the mind, directing the mind to create on my behalf, learning to direct my emotions to create on my behalf, even the physical body, learning to direct the physical body and the actions I take to create what I intend, rather than, as I said, being in this place of constant reaction to our own mind, body, emotion.
I could see this being really effective, not only in business, but also in relationships as well. If you're having a disagreement or an argument, this would help you be less reactive, and it'd help you avoid that fear-based mindset where you would be able to take a step back and make the best decision from there.
Yeah, you've got it exactly. I mean, I think about, a gentleman I actually just got off the phone with, one of my private clients I was speaking to just before I hopped on here with you. He was telling me all about, how his wife just doesn't listen to him and doesn't do anything he wants her to do, and, how she's, just this negative berate because he was upset about something she did this morning. And we've all had that experience where we get triggered and we're upset. And then we say something, and then it's like right after we say it, sometimes it's like we just want to take it right back, but then it's too late. It's out there. Or, you sit down and you write that email, or you send the text message to your wife or to your girlfriend, and then right after you send it, sometimes you're like, oh, did I really do that? Or maybe it takes a little time, right? And, a half hour passes by, and then you look at the text message you sent. You see that email you sent. You start reflecting on the things you just said, and then you realize when you've come out of that fear-based state, you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that to her. Like obviously that's not going to create the relationship that I'd really like to have. But if we don't have a technique, a strategy, a way of shifting and changing that behavior based on habit, we're going to do it again. And so if we stop and we just sort of create a vision fulfilled, as I say, what's the vision fulfilled for what I'd like to see in my relationship? What's the kind of relationship I'd like to build with my wife, with my girlfriend? And what attributes would be there? How would I care for her? How would she feel by way of how I'm treating her? And then just simply brainstorm ways I can execute that. And then, then literally just take action. And as I say, if we have that vision fulfilled as our reference point, then it's very easy to look at our action in any given moment and say, am I aligning with the vision fulfilled, or am I aligning with something else? And the reason I use that word vision fulfilled and not just vision is because vision is something we fulfill now. It's not something that happens for us or that we create later. The seed I plant, the way that I'm taking action right now, the words I share with my wife, my girlfriend, the love I show her, the space I hold, the way I listen now is going to create the vision of my relationship. And so if we think of what's the benchmark that I'm setting for myself, what's the goal that I wish to attain here, and I have that vision fulfilled in my mind, then I can easily become aware of how I'm taking action, take that breath if I need to shift out of fear, and take action in a way that will fulfill the vision.
And Joey, how have you applied these lessons into your everyday life?
I use them every moment of every day inside of creating. And as I said, each day I connect with my own vision fulfilled. And so, today Before I even hopped on this interview with you, I used these techniques, and I stopped and I just took a few moments and I said, what's the vision I wish to fulfill? And I said, I want to inspire anyone who listens to this call, anybody who listens to this interview. I want them to feel inspired. I want them to feel encouraged that they can change and transform their life. And then I just took a moment and I said, okay, well, how do I wish to align? What's the energy I wish to convey to really make that possible? And then it was very clear, I want to be passionate on that call. I want to be enthusiastic. I want to be inspiring. I want to be encouraging. And then ideas came, here's what I could do, and here are the things I could say, and here are the things I could touch on that would really, practically give people the access to creating change. And, I'm going to be with my girlfriend later on tonight, and I'm thinking, where do I want to take her to dinner? How do I want her to feel in that dinner? And I'll just create a little vision fulfilled for the outcome of that dinner. By way of going to dinner, I just want her to know I love her. I want her to know I care about her. And then I just brainstorm, what are ways I can make that possible? And so literally I'll use it in these moment-to-moment activities that show up in my day. If I'm working with one of my staff members or employee, how do I want them to feel as a result of working for me? How do I want them to feel today? And what way of feeling or being or taking action is going to create the outcome we want for the company? And so I'll just kind of step into those strategies constantly.
Well, I just want you to know that you're doing all of that right now to the audience. You said you wanted to be passionate and inspiring. That's coming across quite clear. Well, Joey, when I do yoga, I know that after yoga, I feel like really present and conscious. Even just like as I get out of the studio and go into my car and drive, and I'm in traffic, and like I'm just more aware, and it really is a gift to be present. It really is. And so my question for you is, why do you think people are living unconsciously? Why do you think people are not present?
I think it can simply be put as it's just habit. Any way of being that we show up in life as, a particular way of thinking, a bad habit that we take action inside of, how we speak to one another. It's not like we just made those things up. It was a conditioning. It was a training that we learned from somewhere. Maybe our parents when we were young, friends, mentors we had in life, etc. But what happens is most people don't realize they're being trained. They don't realize, as I say, their inner matrix of their mind, their body, their emotion, how all that comes together. They don't realize it's being trained and cultivated. And so what happens is these patterns, these ways of being and feeling and thinking and taking action in the world, they get conditioned inside of us. And then before you know it, we're just sort of along for the ride and taking action without even realizing that we're the one that's driving it. And we move into a place of, as I say, unconscious reaction. And reaction, I say, is unconscious because we're not intending how we're going to respond to various situations in our life. Something occurs, it triggers us, and then we simply react. Someone says something to us, it triggers us, and then we simply react. Those reactions have all been designed. They've all been trained. They've all been cultivated by way of our natural life experiences. We learned, my dad reacted this way, and I adopted that from him. My best friend used to react this way, I adopted that from him. I see this as how my boss handles these situations, I adopt that from him. And it starts at a very young age. It actually starts when we're in the womb of the mother, as science shows. When our later trimester, even before we have language, our brain is literally just taking in gobs of information through the neurons. And it's learning emotional patterns, it's learning, mental patterns, it's learning just a tremendous amount of information, and then that information becomes what I call our inner matrix. And if we don't learn to kind of take an objective vantage point on those conditioned reactions that exist inside, then we cannot change them. And if we don't have the right tools to change the programs that have been written inside, then naturally we're just going to be inside of this unconscious reaction. Something happens, we react. Something happens, we react. As soon as we can learn to move that reaction to an intended response, now we can begin to condition ourselves intentionally in a way that's going to aspire or align with what our vision fulfilled is in life, whether that's a certain career status, whether that's a certain aspect in a relationship, a certain kind of relationship, so on and so on.
Yeah. I know that when I travel, I'm extremely conscious. I notice everything, the trees, the benches, the buildings, the architecture, the people, the smell, like all of that just kind of, you're just like, wow, look at all this stuff. And like when you're in your own town, like you don't even really, you like walk right past those things. You don't even notice those things. So what role does traveling play with living consciously?
Yeah, again, for me, it's not as much as the places we go, but it's learning to kind of see ourselves in the way you're talking about inside of travel. When we go to a new place, as an example, it's a great metaphor for what I'm speaking to in terms of the internal self. Because just like you said, when you go to a new place, you sort of pay attention to everything because nothing is familiar. And by way of nothing being familiar, it's like we have to pay attention to how do I go from A to B, and we pay attention to details that are around us in a much more acute sense just to sort of get accustomed to our new environment and how we're taking action. And so, but in reality, even if we go to another place or another country, we still take ourselves wherever we go. And so even though we might start to notice these new things, most of the time, if we pay attention, our experience of life in one place and another is the same experience. Meaning, if I'm sad, I'm in Vail, Colorado right now. If I'm sad here in my Vail, in Vail, Colorado, and I go to Fiji, well, I'm still going to take that sadness with me. I'm going to be much more acutely aware of new things, like you're saying, because I'm now kind of forced to pay attention to what's happening around me. But my internal state or internal experience is going to follow me. And so, what's a great metaphor, though, is learning to see ourselves in these new ways. What's my mind thinking, and what are new ways of thinking I can adopt that are going to align me with a new experience of life? Like taking a vacation, but doing it inside.
Yeah, I like the connection that you made there, and really just kind of viewing those, the eyes that I was talking about, when I travel, just having that all the time, that would be, quite the experience, all the time. So I like that connection you made. But now, Joey, let's go into the knowledge round. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, guys, if you're not reading books, then you're getting left behind. Somebody spent their entire life learning some invaluable lesson, and the best format that anyone could ever put it in is a book. It's the shortest, fastest, simplest way to consume content. So I know there are so many books available, and we talk about books all the time on the podcast, so there must be so many running through your head, and you're wondering, where do I begin? Well, I've compiled the top 30 books and success quotes from all of my guests in the last 100 episodes, so you can get them all for free. If you go to kfmfree.com, you can simply download the top 30 books that every man must live by. Again, that's kfmfree.com.
Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime.
Joey, scenario here for you. Imagine you're at Barnes & Noble and somebody picked up your book and they asked you, hey, have you read this? What's it about? How would you explain it to a newcomer?
What I would say is this book will make possible whatever you intend for your life. If you're willing to really not just read the book, but engage it as a tool for transformation. And so anything you can imagine, whether it's, an advancement in your career, bettering the relationship with my husband and wife, this book is going to give you the knowledge, the information, the tools, and also the techniques to really go inside yourself and learn how do I exercise the mind, the emotions, my physical being, my intuitive capacity in a way that I'll be able to condition myself in a way that aligns with the vision I choose to fulfill and make that possible for me.
All right. And Joey, what advice would you give to someone who's feeling kind of unsure of what they should do with their life, their purpose?
What I would say is stop searching for your purpose, because as soon as I feel lost and I'm looking for my purpose, I'm in the place of searching, I'll never find it. Just begin to acknowledge every moment. I am exactly where I'm supposed to be this moment. I am living my purpose right now. And by way of accepting, acknowledging that I'm living my purpose right now, that in this moment, the world, the universe, the way it has all come together has brought me to this instant, there are no accidents. And so I'm here because I'm exactly where I need to be and where I'm supposed to be. Then all of a sudden we start to accept I'm living my purpose now, and we start to align with the way we would as though we are living the purpose rather than looking for our purpose. So if we look at the focus of mind, when we go, I'm looking for my purpose, I'm always looking, I'm always searching. My purpose is somewhere outside of me. It's off in the distance, and it's in the future. It's not now. And so if I just shift that focus of my mind and I go to, I'm living my purpose right now, all of a sudden my mind, my emotion has to completely reorient around that.
Yeah, I like that transition you made. And just to make that clear, your purpose, if you don't know it, it's to live and go on an adventure and experience life. It's not to, watch sports and play video games and just eat junk food and just like give yourself instant gratification through drinking or smoking. It's to go out there and live and experience life.
Yeah, and like I say oftentimes, for me, purpose is less about what I'm attaining outside, because people get inside this trap. When I have $1 million, or when I have the girl of my dreams, when I get that promotion, it's when I get, then I'll feel. When I get, then I'll feel. Then we never get, then we never feel that way. And so rather than looking at purpose as something I'm to attain, look at it as something I'm to give. What am I here to give to the world, to give to the people around me? What is it, if I feel love right now and I offer that love to somebody, if I feel compassion right now and I offer that compassion, if I feel inspired and I offer that inspiration, now I'm living my purpose, but I'm also experiencing fulfillment in my life by way of offering those states, by way of offering that energy out to the world. And it's that's going to create a huge momentum and take me ultimately where I intend to go anyway.
Haha, I like that. And Joey, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
I'd say in the earlier years, I'd say what held me back was doubt in myself. Can I do it? Is it really possible? And it would show up in different ways. I remember when I started coaching people, even though I was creating transformation in people's lives, and I had psychologists and psychiatrists and very educated people sending people to me, I would still have this little insecurity and doubt in myself. Should I really be doing this? I don't have a master's degree. I don't have an education here. And it was literally just the self-doubt that held me back, because the capacity was there. Not only was the capacity there, but psychologists, psychiatrists, business coaches, etc., were sending me people they worked with for 10 years and they couldn't get results, and I was getting results. But I couldn't see it because of my own doubt, my own insecurity. And so when I began to make that shift for myself, and I just began to create reasons why I should be doing this and why I am and I have the credibility to do this, immediately things began to change for me. And it wasn't just as it pertained to my business and, what I was creating inside of my work, but it changed my relationship with women. It changed my relationship with my family, my relationship with my friends, because what I didn't notice at the time was I was bringing that doubt, that insecurity into all of those different spaces in my life. And so even though I was focused on changing it inside of, serving other people in my career, we could say, it ended up changing every aspect, every facet of my existence.
Yeah. And have you had a mentor, Joey, that's played a role in your life, someone that's helped you on your journey, maybe somebody that you met on your study of Asia when you were studying Eastern philosophy?
I would say the person who had the biggest impact on my life is a mentor of mine, a teacher of mine who I still study with today. And it's actually a woman. Her name is Her Holiness Saima is her title. And she just gave me access to literally seeing the world in a way I never knew possible before. And also showed me how to access that in a way that I never learned before. And one of the biggest things I learned from her was this idea I actually spoke of earlier today, which is, stop looking for what is the world going to give to you, because the world has nothing to give to you. And start paying attention to where your power truly lies, which is what do you have to offer to the world, and put your focus on offering that. And she told me everything will change, and it certainly did. As soon as I took my focus from what can I get from the world, and what do people have to give to me, and I just started focusing on what do I have to offer, and I just started offering it freely and abundantly, my whole world transformed.
Wow, I like that a lot. Stop looking for what the world can give you and start looking to what you can give the world. I like that. And Joey, this tough question here. What are your 3 most influential books and why?
One of the books that really helped me was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I mean, I remember reading this 14 years ago. It's obviously a classic, and it just got me inside of that idea of living your passion, and really making that the purpose of life is just living that passion, and that kind of everything's going to fall into place there. And the stories in that book, and the inspirational stories about the different characters who literally had nothing, but they kind of set this goal for themselves in life and just lived it with extraordinary passion. And it's sort of like the world, like the quote I used earlier today, right? I am the center of my world. I'm the center of the universe. It's like it really seems like when we live in that passionate way, everything just comes into order in such a perfect way to just line it up for us to go exactly where we intend to go. Another really great book is actually the woman I mentioned, the Ma's book. It's called Petals of Grace. It just gives all of these amazing ways of just kind of aligning with a way of being today. How do we really, condition or train that internal self, as I was speaking to, my mind, my emotion, etc., and just sort of presents this very different way of looking at the world. And it's a great training for the mind because it's so abstract inside of the way most people think that it forces us out of our box and into a new way of perceiving the world. And when we do it, the world changes dramatically. It changes drastically in a wonderful way. And if I were to name a third one, I would say it would be The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, because he really went into in that book about systems and in terms of entrepreneurship, about, just making it so simple for people to see kind of systems and how they work. And, when you look at systems and you take it even outside of that idea of business, meaning, that you want to do things the same way every time and, create an experience and make sure you can duplicate it and all those ideas. I mean, the reality is if we look at it in a microcosm, we look at how we think. Most people think the same way day in, day out, and it creates a result in life. They feel a certain way day in and day out, creates a certain result in life. It leads to certain actions. And we're really inside those same thoughts, emotions, and action consistently. And so if we look at that as a system and we sort of look at it as I'm going to design my own internal system, then the book will take on a different meaning even.
All right, really good books there. And if for those of you listening, you can pick up one of these books in Audible format. That's an audiobook at kfmfree.com. So you can get one of these books for free as an audiobook with kfmfree.com. So Joey, let's go even further now. Like, what are 2 or 3 life skills that you need in order to succeed in your field?
You've got to be what you're speaking to. I mean, especially in my field, there's a lot of people out there today that are aspiring to be coaches and mentors other people, and in the field of what I would call personal development, psychiatry, psychology, whatever it is, whatever avenue that looks like. And I would say one thing most important is before you're going to look to transform somebody else, you've got to be that transformation yourself. You have to truly embody joy and passion if you're going to ignite that in somebody else. You have to be successful and be a millionaire if you're going to show somebody else how to attain millions. And so what I would say is first and foremost, truly be the example of what you want to create for somebody else. I'd say this is number one, most important side of what I do. And the second thing I would say is being able to truly access a true belief in other people's capacity. Because what I find, just like I was sharing in terms of doubt earlier for myself, people are capable of absolutely extraordinary things. I mean, if you're listening to this right now, you are capable of extraordinary things. And I'm not exaggerating that. It's absolutely true. And it's the belief that it's true sometimes that I think gives us permission to rise to the highest in ourselves. And so being able to truly have faith that somebody is capable of something extraordinary and sort of holding that on their behalf until they can hold it for themselves. And if I look at, what brought me to where I am today, it's because I had some amazing mentors in my life that held this space for what they knew I was capable of at times when I just didn't believe it.
Wow, that's a huge thing, and I see that too. You have to be that transformation in order to teach that transformation. That's you think that just makes sense, but I often do see others doing the opposite. Let's go in with a scenario now, Joey. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
I'd say don't do anything that you're thinking to do, and do the opposite.
Oh man.
No, I think what I would say is, I would invite my 20-year-old self to pay attention to what's in my heart, what's in your heart's desire, and what do you feel is most important to you, and commit to aligning with and fulfilling that purpose. And if it doesn't fully align with what that heart's desire is, that heart's passion, give yourself permission not to have to do it. Because if I think of myself when I was 20, I did a lot of things at that time because I felt like I had to do them, not because I wanted to do them, not because I had a passion for doing them. And at different points in my life, I realized that the having to do often came from what I perceived I needed to do for others or live up to others' expectations, so on and so on. And so when I really stepped into that place of realizing this is my passion, this is what really inspires me, this is what wakes me up in the morning, and I began to live for that, everything changed.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And Joey, do you have an underrated characteristic that you believe if every person could work on this, they would see massive results in their life?
Underrated. I would say emotions. The use of emotions. I find a lot of information out there right now about how to think and how to, create vision and positive thinking and all those things, but not a lot of people speak to the importance of developing one's emotional intelligence, one's emotional capacity. And what I find is that's really at the foundation of transformation. If what's inside is the emotion of anger or the emotion of resentment or doubt, and then that's what I'm feeling, that's going to shade and color my entire life. And so if we learn to really be in relationship with our emotions in an exceptional way, that is going to, by far, be one of the most important elements in terms of driving a life, not only for a fulfillment, but also external success. And I would say that even when I work with, say, top executives of Fortune 500 companies, that's the area that we end up focusing on. And when they dial that in, it just takes them to a whole new level.
Yeah, I can see that. And now just kind of reflecting back on your travels around the world and studying martial arts and mysticism and Buddhism and conscious transformation, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
I would say, my philosophy on life success is not to strive for success at all, because it's like when we strive for success as success, we end up finding a room with emptiness, as I say. But really, do what you love doing. Live passionately inside of what is your innermost desire, your innermost inspiration, and commit to that fully. And live today as though it was your last. I learned this in martial arts and in my traditional martial arts teaching, and this is something I live by every single day. It absolutely serves me. Is this idea, if we're going to go to battle and I've got a sword on my side and I'm running into battle, like in the old days, the samurai days, they didn't know if they were going to come back from battle that day. And so to live fully today as though it was your last will transform your existence. And so many people, they're just sort of getting through their day. They just sort of coast through their day. And if you make that change, live today as though it was your last day on this planet. Not to say it will be, but then you're going to live fully. And so I'd say those two things. Don't strive for success. Strive for your passion. And live today as though it was your last.
Wow, I'm moved. I'm shaking here in my chair. Great job. That's going to conclude the knowledge round. So, Joey, let's go into the things you're working on now. Take it to the present day. Like, what's getting you out of bed in the morning?
What gets me up every morning is looking forward to the next life I get to touch, the next inspiration I get to ignite in somebody, and watching people grow, change, and transform. And luckily, or not luckily, but I've built my entire life around that, and every moment, every day is an inspiration for me. And so, lots of different things I'm up to lately. I just wrote the book that you mentioned, The Inner Matrix. That's a great way to start accessing more of these teachings, etc. And, I'll be teaching 30 weekends next year, 30 programs, in-person programs and seminars. And, this is where the magic really happens. This is where we really get to do that reprogramming and conditioning I talked about and really create your internal training regimen that you can take back into life and really make some amazing things happen. And so, if you want to engage some of that with me, you can just check out my website, obviously, www.joeyklein.com. And, I got some free offerings there. And if you just go to the events page, you can check me out. And I have free events I give. I have weekend seminars that are paid courses. And, I'd love for any of you to come check those things out because that's what I'm up to every day.
Oh man, just extremely, extremely exciting work that you're doing. Your schedule's packed for the next year. I'm excited for the work that you're going to do and the type of transformation that you're going to give. So Joey, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story and your life lessons here with my community today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here.
All right, and that's going to wrap up episode 110 with Joey Klein.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast show. It's been a pleasure having you be a part of a thriving community of men who want to crush it in all aspects of life.